Karen blocked my ranch airstrip, so I landed a Blackhawk helicopter in her garden. What would you do if your neighbor turned your private airstrip into her personal parking lot? All to prove a point. For Tom Redding, a rancher in the sprawling Montana hills, this wasn't just a hypothetical. His neighbor, Karen Whitlock, had waged a petty war over a strip of land, and her latest stunt blocking his airstrip with her SUV was the final straw. What followed was a clash of wills, a daring move, and a lesson in consequences that left the whole town buzzing. Tom had lived on his 500-acre ranch for over a decade, a place where the sky stretched endless and the only sounds were the wind and the occasional hum of his Cessna 172. The small airstrip on his property wasn't just a luxury. It was his lifeline. He used it to fly supplies, check on distant cattle, and even ferry his daughter, Ellie, to her college in Bozeman. But Karen, who'd moved into the neighboring property 2 years ago, had other ideas. She claimed a corner of Tom's airstrip encroached on her land, a dispute born from a surveyor's error she refused to let go. It started with passive-aggressive notes, then escalated to her planting no trespassing signs along the airstrip's edge. Tom tried reasoning with her, even offering to pay for a new survey, but Karen wouldn't budge. "It's my land, and I'll do what I want," she'd snap, her voice sharp enough to cut through the prairie wind. The real trouble began when Karen parked her gleaming white SUV right in the middle of Tom's airstrip one crisp October morning. She chained it to a post, ensuring he couldn't move it without a fight. A note taped to the windshield read, "This is MY property. No more flights." Tom stared at the SUV, his jaw tight, as Ellie stood beside him, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was supposed to fly to Bozeman that day for midterms. "Dad, what are we going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling with frustration. Tom didn't answer right away. He just looked at the SUV, then at the sky, his mind racing. Karen had crossed a line, and he wasn't about to let her win. Tom wasn't just a rancher. He was a retired Army aviator with 20 years of service and connections that ran deep. He made a call to an old friend, Captain Mike Delgado, who was stationed at a National Guard base 200 miles away. "Mike, I need a favor," Tom said, his voice steady but laced with a fire Mike hadn't heard in years. He explained the situation, and Mike, who'd flown Blackhawks in Afghanistan with Tom, didn't hesitate. "Give me a day," he said. "I'll see what I can do." What Tom didn't expect was the twist Mike had in mind, a plan so bold it would turn Karen's stunt into a spectacle. The next morning, as the sun crested the mountains, a low rumble echoed across the valley. Karen was sipping coffee on her porch when she saw it. A UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter, its blades slicing the air, descending toward her property. Her jaw dropped as the massive machine hovered over her meticulously manicured garden, the downdraft flattening her prized roses and scattering her lawn furniture like confetti. Tom was in the co-pilot seat, guiding Mike to a perfect landing right in the center of Karen's backyard. The rotors slowed, and Tom stepped out, his boots crunching on her sod. Karen stormed out, her face red with fury. "What the hell are you doing?" she screamed, waving her arms. Tom crossed his arms, calm as ever. "You blocked my airstrip, Karen. I needed somewhere to land." The truth was, Tom had checked every legal box. His lawyer, Sarah, a sharp-witted woman who'd grown up on a neighboring ranch, confirmed that Karen's SUV was illegally parked on his deeded property. The airstrip dispute was still in court, but Karen had no right to obstruct his access. Sarah had also dug up a surprising detail. Karen's garden, where Tom now stood, was built on a utility easement that allowed public access for emergencies. A Blackhawk landing wasn't exactly an emergency, but it was close enough to skirt the law. Mike, grinning from the cockpit, had secured clearance for a training flight to Tom's coordinates, making the landing technically legitimate. Karen's outrage, however, was just beginning. The confrontation that followed was the talk of the county. Karen called the sheriff, who arrived to find a crowd of neighbors gathered, phones out, filming the Blackhawk parked among her shattered begonias. Sheriff Daniels, a no-nonsense man who'd dealt with Karen's complaints before, listened as she ranted about trespassing and property damage. "You can't just land a military helicopter in my yard," she shrieked, pointing at Tom. But Tom was ready. He handed the sheriff a folder with Sarah's research, property deeds, the easement agreement, and a photo of Karen's SUV chained to his airstrip. "She's the one trespassing, Sheriff," Tom said. "I just needed a place to land so my daughter could get to school." Ellie, standing nearby, waved shyly, her backpack still on. The sheriff's deputy, a young woman named Clara, couldn't hide her amusement. She'd grown up hearing stories of Tom's flying days and had her own bone to pick with Karen, who'd once reported Clara's brother for fishing in a creek that crossed their properties. Clara whispered something to the sheriff, who nodded and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're gonna need to move your vehicle now, or I'll have it towed at your expense." Karen's face went from red to purple, but she wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, threatening to call her lawyer, the mayor, even the governor. "This is an outrage," she yelled. "I'll sue you all." But the crowd wasn't on her side. A neighbor shouted, "You blocked his airstrip, Karen. What did you expect?" Laughter rippled through the group, and Karen's bravado began to crack. As the day unfolded, Karen's world unraveled. The sheriff towed her SUV, leaving her to pay a hefty fine. The National Guard issued a statement clarifying the landing was part of a routine training exercise. But whispers spread that Mike had pulled strings for his old friend. Karen's lawyer advised her to drop the airstrip dispute, as the evidence was overwhelmingly against her. Worse, her garden, her pride and joy was a wreck. The Blackhawk's downdraft had uprooted her flower beds, and the viral videos of the landing, now circulating on X, turned her into a local laughingstock. One post read, "Karen thought she could block a rancher's airstrip. He brought a Blackhawk to her backyard. Justice served." It racked up thousands of likes, with comments piling on about karma for Karens. But the real blow came from an unexpected source. Karen's own daughter, Mia, a quiet 19-year-old who'd stayed out of her mother's feuds. Mia showed up at Tom's ranch that evening, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry about my mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's been like this since Dad left. She just doesn't know how to stop." Mia revealed that Karen's obsession with the property line stemmed from her divorce, a desperate need to control something in her life. Tom listened, his anger softening. He'd seen pain drive people to do foolish things. "Tell her to move the signs," he said gently. "We can work this out." Mia nodded, promising to try. In the end, Tom's gamble paid off. Karen removed her signs and dropped the dispute, though she never apologized. The airstrip was his again, and Ellie made it to Bozeman in time for her exams, flown by Tom in his Cessna. The Blackhawk landing became legend, a story told at every bar and diner in town. Tom didn't gloat, but he did frame a photo of the helicopter in Karen's garden, hanging it in his barn as a quiet reminder of what happens when you push too far. The community rallied around him, with neighbors offering to help repair the airstrip and even starting a crowdfunding page for Ellie's tuition, calling it the Blackhawk Scholarship. The lesson wasn't just for Karen. It was for anyone who thinks they can bully their way to victory without facing consequences. Tom's stand was about more than an airstrip. It was about protecting his family, his home, and his way of life. As for Karen, she kept to herself after that, her garden slowly recovering but her reputation in tatters. Mia started visiting Tom's ranch, helping with chores and talking about her dreams of becoming a pilot. Tom offered to teach her, a small gesture that felt like a bridge to something better. What do you think? Was Tom's Blackhawk landing a stroke of genius or a step too far? Should Karen have backed down sooner? Or did she have a point worth fighting for? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear where you stand on this Montana showdown.